What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another video, and today we're going to be talking about what are the top 10 weapons you need to level up before we go into the Warzone integration Pacific Caldera map. Now, we're a little over a week away. I know this coming weekend, maybe you haven't gotten that many weapons leveled, or maybe half leveled, and kind of getting down to that wire before we get into the integration. Want to get a brief idea on what possibly would be some solid weapons to level up, what will be solid for your playstyle. That's also something that I see going forward, either viable or meta when it comes to the new Warzone experience that we're going to be having. Hopefully they don't ruin this completely. Hopefully they just don't shit the bed like they did with the Cold War integration, and just about everything either comes in broken, weapons aren't doing properly, attachments aren't doing exactly what they're intended. Who knows? We've seen this before if you've been there before. It was a bit of a nightmare, and I'm really got my fingers crossed on this one. Hopefully this one goes solid, but even at that same point, with all the weapons from Cold War and Modern Warfare being integrated into this as well, we may see a lot of those get broken along the going forward. But we'll see in the coming future. Now that in point, let's get on to my number 10 weapon. The Owen Gun. Now, this one reminds me of the Milano. If you saw the Milano in the past, I believe J-God was the one to make the first video on that weapon being a long-range option. It had extremely low recoil, easy to use, and had damage that was, I think, even stronger than the AMAX back in that point before it got nerfed, and you could use it as a long-range primary. Now, this is a weapon that I feel as though you could possibly do that with. There's more than a few attachments that will make the recoil control a lot easier with this, give it a little bit more damage range as well. And if you've used it before, you know how easy it can be to hit your targets with this. Now, sure, in the beginning, you'll have that stick magazine on top of it that'll kind of give you too much visual blockage when it comes to aiming down sights. I know it did hinder me a few times. But later on, we'll get these drum mags. We've got 72 rounds with this one. This one is kind of built out right here. I'll have each one of these guns built out in a certain way that I feel is strong inside of Vanguard and could possibly be strong going forward inside of Warzone. A few of them I will change up some attachments, and when we get to that point, I'll be doing some videos on that. So subscribe if you'd like to see some of those videos, see some of this coming forward. I'll definitely be there down for the launch day. I'll be there minute one as soon as I can get into it. But at that same point, let's get back into the gun. The thing that makes this something that could be a long-range competitor or just extremely viable when it comes to the medium to close range and really have a strong medium range type of fight that could arguably be a solid sniper support weapon is going to be this Kerr's 60 round drum. It's going to give our damage a huge boost. As you'll notice right now, we're only dealing 25. We've got 821 on that fire rate. We'll be losing a good bit of fire rate with this, but that damage amplified is what's going to make this a whole lot stronger and something that you could utilize as a sniper support. We've got the effective damage range going up, as well as the bullet velocity, strong mobility with this at the same point. And as you'll notice, the vertical recoil and horizontal does go up from this, but that's why we'd switch up a few attachments to make this a long-range viable. Whereas right now, it's a bit of a mobility, hip fire, sprint fire, close range kind of SMG style. With 72 rounds at that, it's a strong competitor when it comes to pushing into Warzone at this point. A lot of the weapons that we're going to be utilizing are going to have large magazines, easy to control recoil. These are the things you're looking for. Something that has a decent fire rate, decent damage range, and damage on that same point. But let's get into the number 9 pick. Now the Shredder, my AS44. This weapon absolutely reminds me of the FFAR. If you remember when the Cold War integration happened, wasn't too much longer after it came in that people started noticing the AR, the FFAR, as a secondary style weapon for close and medium range fights. It had extremely high recoil, so it wasn't the best for long range. You could kind of build it out to help with that, but that's what I feel with this weapon. It's not for long range. I tried to build it out a few times, but even at long range, the recoil control on this is hard unless you're in close range. In close range, the sheer fact that we have a monstrous rate of fire with this of 1,250, you're going to be melting people up close with this weapon. This is one of those weapons that has strong mobility at the same point, decent sprint to fire. Not exactly the best, but if you're in close, or also one thing to note, we can eliminate sprint to fire altogether with this gun with Gung Ho. So that way, immediately, even while sprinting, we can start firing from the hip. It has decent hip fire. You can build it out for a bit stronger hip fire at that same point, but I feel it's going to be one of those weapons that we kind of do a little bit for hip fire, but a lot for the simple fact of being able to ADS quickly and just melt that person up close. We're going to be utilizing this as that secondary, not our primary long range. Who knows, in the coming future, they may change up some of the attachments. Maybe it has a different approach, but right now this could be arguably one of the most broken secondaries inside of the Warzone loadouts that you'll be seeing in the future. And at that same point, if you're not looking for that gung-ho where you can immediately just jump out of that sprint to fire, we've got momentum as well, which gives us that mood speed after kill, which is going to make this even faster, have you pretty much crouch sliding behind people, getting around 4-man teams and possibly melting the entire team at that same point, especially since we have 60 rounds with this magazine. Now going forward, I do have incendiary on it here right now since we are in Vanguard. Closer range fights is what we're going for, so we're just adding a little bit of damage onto that, but lengthened is going to be the one you'll want to go for when it comes to the Warzone Pacific integration. Arguably could use that also inside of Vanguard as well, just to make your bullets hit that target faster. But I can this is going to be my secondary and my first loadout going for the first match inside of Pacific Warzone. Guaranteed you need to level this one up. I may have this one low on the list, but that's because there's a lot of other primary weapons at the top that I feel need to be leveled up before you get to this one. Now you could just move this one up on your list. You could just start off with this one instead of the SMGs as well. Maybe you haven't leveled this one up, but you've got all the SMGs done. Highly consider leveling this one up. Now for my number 8 pick, we've got the DP27. We're getting into the LMG categories, and this is one of those LMGs that has laser pinpoint accuracy. Oh God, I love this weapon. I thoroughly enjoyed it the first time I picked it up, even inside of the beta for Vanguard. We've got 105 rounds inside the magazine. That's going to be perfect for us as well. Again, another one of those moments where you want to go with lengthened. Arguably, you want to go with lengthened inside of Vanguard. I was testing some things out with the incendiary. But on that same point, we've got sleight of hand with this. It doesn't exactly help the most amount. This dinner plate, obviously, is going to be a longer reload. But when it comes to sheer accuracy, again, that's one of the things we're going to be looking at for some of these weapons that are really going to transfer over to make them something extremely viable inside of Warzone. And this one is going to be an absolute laser. We have decent damage with this as well. We've got 30 per round. We've got decent, absolutely lovely effective damage range with this, as well as the bullet velocity. But the one thing that will be hindering this weapon is a little bit of mobility and just the simple 6-second reload. It's going to be a long time to reload this weapon in certain gunfights. But if you can work with that, and the sheer fact that it's easy to hit your target with this weapon, especially at long ranges, even in Vanguard, multiple moments where I was just taking out snipers like it was nothing. As soon as I saw that glint, just moved to the target, boom, melted them. No worries about it. But when it comes to LMGs, this wouldn't be the first one I'd level up, but if you've already got the MG42 done, I'd definitely move on to this one next. Now, on to our number 7 hit. We've got the MG42 Absolute Laser. The rate of fire on this weapon is unbelievable as well. We've almost closed in on 1,000 rounds per minute. We've got amazing damage range for a weapon with this rate of fire and recoil control for this rate of fire, which is absolutely absurd. Now, we will be dealing only 20 damage per bullet, but at that same point, with the bullet velocity and the sheer mobility of this weapon, as you notice with the VDD skeletal, we'll get that aim walking movement and aim walking steadiness, as well as the initial accuracy and recoil. It gives us that really strong stray speed with this weapon, and you just can't beat 250 rounds inside of a box magazine. Now, another thing to be looking at is the anti-material rounds. When it comes to 125, that's going to bump us up by another 5 damage per round, as well as giving us more to that effective damage range. This could be one of those trade-up moments where we can't see the exact damage values right now. They could change these up going into Warzone, but when it comes to finally getting into Warzone, again, like I said, I'll be doing videos on a lot of these weapons later on. If you'd like to subscribe and see some of those, I will be testing this out, whether or not the 125 round is going to be doing better than the 250 round. It's kind of one of those, do you want the quantity or do you want the amplified damage. We won't be able to determine which one's going to be better until we get into Warzone, but that anti-material 125 round may melt a significantly more faster than the 250, even though that 250 is going to come in handy where arguably you could probably take on 2 teams, 4-man teams at that point and completely wipe them before even needing to reload, especially with how easy it is to control that recoil. Absolute laser, strong on mobility for an LMG, surprisingly. We may see that change when it comes into Warzone. Be something we'll have to test out, but this is definitely one of the number 1 LMGs I consider something you need to level before we get into that Warzone integration. Now when it comes to our number 6 pick, Tommy Gun. Band favorite, personal favorite as well. Now, leveling this weapon inside of Vanguard, going to be a bit of a pain. The recoil is something to control. It can be a bit brutal at times to really control it. This is absolutely something you only utilize for close range. Not going to be something that's going to be extremely or even close to viable when it comes to medium range fights. But up close, we have extremely decent rate of fire with this 845. We've got absolutely amazing damage, 34 for an SMG right here. Not exactly the strongest for every SMG, but with the rate of fire we have, strong mobility, hip fire, and one of the number 1 things, again, magazine size is going to be a huge thing inside of Warzone, especially if you're playing in trios or quads. 100 rounds inside of that drum is going to be a huge help, as well as the perk for Frenzy. Now, health regeneration after kills, this may not be the biggest benefit to everybody inside of Warzone, but I guarantee you going forward, we're going to see a lot of TikToks and videos of this that are possibly some of those moments where either they are utilizing it to where they're just able to melt through people constantly, just not even needing to plate up and just mow through an entire 4-man team just based on that health regeneration, or just utilizing this in a way where maybe you take on that 1v1 gunfight, they get you pretty low, but you down them. So one of those moments that'll instantly give you that health regeneration right after, so you can push around, put a plate in or 2, and just not be one shot for the enemy team to come around that corner, because you know that guy downed is just going to be screaming one shot over and over to all of his teammates and trying to rush you right after that. But overall, an extremely strong SMG. This will be one that I'm going to be testing on the first day, 1 in. And you just can't beat that 100-round mag. Decent damage, decent rate of fire. Strong on the hip fire as well. It's going to be a contender for one of the meta SMGs. Now going forward, we've got another SMG. We've got the PPSH. Arguably, this is an absolute melter. This is something that other people may not be taking a shine to because the damage isn't exactly that high, but that rate of fire, that 300, 200 rounds more that we're pumping out with this weapon compared to the other SMGs is going to be very noticeable when it comes to Warzone. As we've seen before with weapons with higher rate of fire, they just have that melter ability. When you're getting in close, you're getting that maximum damage value. There's no drop off to it. You're going to be melting people a lot quicker than you probably think you will be, or that a lot of other people that will be thinking they will be. But on that note, 71 round mag. We're going to have lengthened with this as well. We've got Fleet, where we just have that added weapon swap quickness and movement speed. I wish we had Frenzy with this, or something that added movement speed per kill. That would have been nice. But these are going to be excellent for this weapon as well, especially in some of those moments where, say, we take down a couple of people, maybe we run out on the magazine. We'll be able to have that quick swap speed. If you add an MG42 with this, you're just doing a maximum fire rate build loadout. I mean, you're going to be mowing through some people fairly quickly, and it's more than likely going to be an absolute good time. Now, the recoil control and the accuracy on this isn't exactly the strongest, especially with that rate of fire. This is going to be one of those that's close range only. We don't have the strongest when it comes to effective damage range. Below velocity as well, decent, but not the long or the best. But that rate of fire in close range is definitely going to make this a contender for viable, if not meta. Now, number 4 pick, we've got the Automaton. You're going to see a lot of bots using this. You're going to see a lot of people using this weapon because it is laser pinpoint. The accuracy and recoil control on this, it is unbelievable. Absolute laser. I cannot believe how easy it is to use this weapon. Now, the damage on this gun isn't exactly the strongest when it comes to the 75 round drum. Now for an AR to have 75 rounds, we've got a lot to dish out. This is going to be perfect for trios and quads. That's why I say you're going to see a lot of bots using this. You're going to see a lot of other people, high skill players as well, using this for the simple fact that we've either got 75 rounds with easy to control recoil at 22 per round and 833, extremely nice fire rate for an AR, or we could push over to that 50 round mag. We've got 28 damage with this, as well as effective damage range and bullet velocity increase from this, as well as somehow being a quicker reload. But on that note, this is one of those toss-up moments where, can't be 100% certain whether the 50 is going to be better than the 75, but I imagine the 50 may be a little bit better, but since the damage value isn't increased that much, the number one thing that may make this more viable when it comes to the 50 round is that effective damage range and bullet velocity. It may just push it that extra distance to give you those longer range kills at a faster TTK than, say, the 75 round drum. But this is stacked out to be one of the easiest guns to use, guaranteed going forward. Even if they do increase the recoil ever so slightly, I mean, it's still going to be, you're not going to have to put much effort into using this weapon for long-range fights. Now let's get on to my number 3 pick, Volkstrom Guva. I love this weapon. The mobility on this weapon is extremely strong. It is similar to the Automaton, but it has a bit more recoil control needed, a little bit more balance on that accuracy side of things when it comes to the horizontal recoil control. But when it comes to strafe speed, sheer mobility, sprint to fire, it is beautiful. I love this gun. Inside of Vanguard, I had a lot of fun with this gun as well. There's only one other weapon that I put above this one in the AR category for my most fun weapon to use and most damaging at that same point. But as you'll notice, we've got the 28 damage. We don't exactly have the strongest when it comes to damage range and bullet velocity. Rate of fire is a little bit lower at that same point, but still strong. But it's still an easy to use weapon. It's one of those that has a bit more damage, has 60 rounds, which is better than the 50 round or 50 round mag that we had on the Automaton. And one thing to note, we will want to be going with lengthen on this as well, just to increase that bullet velocity. But 60 rounds, 28, easy to use, not too hard to control that recoil, but the number one thing about this is it just feels right. I'm a mobility type of player when it comes to Warzone and any Call of Duty in general. If I have the ability to kind of crouch slide, move, just get around targets and just feel free, nothing that makes me feel sluggish, this is one of those ARs that really gives me that overall well-rounded type of feels, with also being an extremely decent damage, decent rate of fire. It's going to be a contender. I put this higher on my list because it's a personal favorite of mine. This could be something that you could arguably push down. The Automaton arguably should be leveled before this, but I put this one up here because I thoroughly enjoyed it. But the number one weapon is still better than the Automaton in my personal opinion. But let's get on to number 2 pick. We've got the Type 100. Now, if you've noticed this one inside of Vanguard already, this has been broken. We do have the Vital Proficiency, which could arguably make this a lot stronger than it needs to be inside of Warzone going forward. If you don't know what the Vital Proficiency does, it gives us that ability to hit that upper torso where we're not exactly needing to hit every headshot to get the same amount of damage. We'll get that headshot damage from that upper torso. You could even let the recoil just kind of throw you up to that in the same point if you're just going straight, whipping onto that target, hitting that center bass, and then going up from there. Now, one of the sad parts about this weapon, only 30 round mag. I'd arguably only use this because the 40 round drum at 28 damage per round, we don't have the strongest rate of fire with this one. We've seen better rates of fire, obviously, with some of these SMGs and better damage at this rate of fire. So the 30 round, as you notice, we've already got 40. We're 5 up over our vital damage. In a way, this damage is a bit better than our hitting our upper torso. That's what arguably has made this so overpowered in a way. But The effective damage range is nice, bullet velocity. Sadly, this may be one of those weapons that could be only viable for solo and duo since it is a 30-round mag. You may see some people utilizing it in trios or possibly quads. You know, high-level, high-skill players are probably going to use this if it has a really fast TTK. Just take 2 down, move back, reload plate, and then push back into the fight. But it could be one of those things that could lose a gunfight for you. So you take 2 down, third buddy just comes around the corner and you're stuck on reload. It's one of those moments that could just end that match for you, if not just end your life in that moment. If you don't have other people to buy you back in that moment, that's one of those rip moments that sadly you couldn't do anything, and it was all cost of the fact that you didn't have a larger magazine. So that's one thing to look for in the coming future. I will say this more than likely could come in broken when it comes to Warzone, and arguably I put it at the top because it feels like more than likely it's going to be one of those broken weapons going forward. And if you're one of those players that's solo or duo oriented, this is a strong one to go for. But since I already explained the other SMGs and you haven't noticed this one until last, trust me, get the other SMGs going, or other SMGs done before this one if you're going for trios or quads, and then leave this one for last. But if you are a solo duo player, get this one done first if you haven't already done it already. But my top number 1 pick, the NZ41, absolute melter, a 2-shotter inside of Vanguard right now. And God, I lost my train of thought right there. Sorry, guys. But we've got the 2-shotter right here. Extremely high damage, easy to control recoil, is full auto at the same point. It almost feels like a marksman rifle with the damage that it does have. And there is one proficiency on this. We've got that effective damage range. We've got that bullet velocity. It feels strong when it comes to the mobility as well. Doesn't quite have that hip fire ability, but we weren't looking for that with this weapon. But the proficiency on this is interesting. This is one thing that I'm kind of irritated about. I kind of don't really want this going forward into Warzone, but it's something that will be a lot of fun for me to use. As it's already been fun for me to use inside of Vanguard, there's been more than a few moments where I've had people shoot me first, and then I'm able to quickly, snap onto that target, hit them a few times. And if you've noticed inside of this game, the flinch can be extremely strong. And since pinned is doing increased flinch damage, you're automatically just whipping that person straight off of you. You're able to finish them off before they could even get the next shots onto you, and it saved my life more than a few times inside of Vanguard. And when it comes to long-range fights, so you have that person that's at a bit of a distance, starts lighting you up with the Automaton or something of that nature, if you're able to whip back around, get onto that target, and start hitting him, you're going to throw him off target and be able to nail him into the ground, or possibly just push him away back into cover, or possibly move to a different position. And then you'll be the one kind of, watching that spot for him to go left or right. And since it is easy to control the accurate or recoil on this weapon, and it's so high of a damage, it's going to be a beautiful weapon to use. This is going to be my first weapon as a primary long range going into Warzone. Now, arguably, we do not use a magazine with this for the simple fact that if we go to the 45 rounds, sure, it does increase the rate of fire, but we drastically reduce the damage for this. We want that 40 per hit, and we'd be losing a lot of effective damage range and bullet velocity out of this. Now, that being said, 30 rounds, it's one of those things that I hope is not going to be a huge deterrent for this weapon, especially since we will be utilizing this for long-range gunplay. A lot of times, if you're able to maintain target, it has decent TTK, and since that pinned, that increased flinch damage is going to be able to throw people off target, we're more than likely going to be able to utilize this quite well inside of trios or quads. I'm hoping personally, this is just me predicting for the future. I will be finding out on day one whether or not that's going to be something that hinders me. But in some of those long-range gunfights, we should have the ability to take cover and reload since we only have 30 rounds. And 30 rounds should be enough. Take 2 out at distance, be able to reload, get back up. Maybe that 2 down players crawled maybe a little bit in that moment, but we don't have the longest reload with this weapon, as you'll notice already. It's only 3 seconds. Not going to be too bad. Could be a little bit better, but at that same point, this is something that's going to be high damage, ripping through people and throwing them off target. That is the number one thing about this weapon, and I thoroughly enjoy this weapon at that same point. Strong mobility, stray speed's decent, and laser accurate. Now, on that note, there are some honorable mentions that I'd like to get into. You could arguably say the BAR could be an Odin-style weapon. This one will have that high damage when it comes to an AR. This may be something that could be melting people for a long-range play. It doesn't have exactly the worst recoil in the world. Well, with some of the higher damage ones, it could be a bit harder, especially if you're facing the NZ41 with that increased flinch damage. You will more than likely be thrown off target with this, and it has an extremely slow rate of fire. Now, my second honorable mention is going to be the Bryn. This one has a similar feel to the BAR. I'm losing my train of thought here. It has that similar feel, but it has that same high amount of damage. Both of these weapons can be a one-shot to the head, which means we're stacking out the damage on these weapons. They could be extremely viable when it comes to Warzone, but the rate of fire, the sheer lack of speed, things of that nature may be and they're the reason I didn't put them on my top 10 list. I'll have to check these out going forward. I've got them pretty much leveled to where I want them to be, and we'll see that coming forward. These are for people that possibly, you've got all the top 10 leveled up. You just looked at this video. Maybe there's some other things you might want to look into. These are some of those options. Now, the Type 11, as well as a decent honorable mention, considering it feels like an SMG to me. We have strong rate of fire with this, extremely easy to use at close range, easy to control recoil, but not quite the high damage that we're looking for. And that's one of those things that just kind of put that off of this list as well. But I will say, if you've got all three of the other LMGs already done, you might as well throw in that Type 11. This could be one of those melter weapons. We don't know about the damage values 100% just yet. Some of these may get nerfed, some of these may get buffed. Maybe the Type 11 ends up being something that we didn't expect to be, possibly a secondary type of weapon that is similar to the AS-44 in a way. Something to look for in the future, and I will be doing videos on this. I will be testing these out, so subscribe if you'd like to see some of those in the coming future. And also, if you'd like to see some of this action live, I will be there day one. I'll leave a link in the description to my Twitch down below, so follow that up for the coming future. Now, shotguns, I didn't really level any of these. Arguably, kind of a toss-up in that moment. SMGs, we've pretty much covered everything but the Sten, honestly. Sten, not really going to work out that well. One thing to note is the Itra Burst may be of value. STG, it's not on my list because everybody, we've already seen this inside of Warzone. Didn't do exactly the greatest. Isn't as strong as it is in Vanguard. You could level it up, but arguably a lot of people have probably already leveled up this weapon considering how overpowered it is inside of Vanguard right now. And I will say, if you're going for sniper rifles, you want that Kar 98. It's got decent quick scope action. But I believe I heard from JGod as well, and for me personally, I feel like the Kar 98 from Modern Warfare is still better than this Kar 98. But if you're utilizing it inside of the Vanguard weapons only mode that will be inside of Warzone going forward, this is something that you'll want to level up going forward as well. Now, I don't have any of the marksman rifles up yet. I will say the G43 and the SVT look viable in a way, but a lot of times marksman rifles don't do very well inside of Warzone unless they're just absolutely broken. I will be leveling these up before going forward. If you've already got some of the other LMGs, SMGs, or assault rifles done, I'd probably consider going for this SVT or the G43. Level those up a bit, especially the SVT. It seems to have some pretty strong damage at that same point, but the G43 has the mobility. But on that note, guys, that's going to be the top 10 list. Hope you guys enjoyed. Goodness, we're already at 30 minutes. Yeah, we've had a lot to talk about here. Hopefully this has helped you guys out. Hope this has helped a lot of you that have possibly not had enough time to level up some of these weapons, giving you some ideas on some of the weapons you need to level up this coming weekend or before we even get into the Warzone Pacific integration. Like I said before, I will be streaming that day. I will be doing content for that. If you'd like to catch the stream on that day, the minute it launches, I'll be here. I'll leave that link down in the description below. Follow me up over there. Follow me up on YouTube or subscribe. Never really asked that stuff anyway. A lot of times you won't see me saying subscribe now for any of my videos. So, you know, this is about the only time I'll say that, just because I'm kind of, just doing promotion for, hey, I'm going to have videos on a lot of these weapons going forwards. Let's see if some of these predictions are correct. I'll have meta loadouts going forward in the future as well. If you want to check those out, just letting you know. But on that note, hope you enjoyed this, and hope you have a good one.